Hi again and welcome to me, Audrina, and yes, it's another day and another different coloured t-shirt for you to enjoy. Well, that's if you're not listening to the story. Anyway, here I am with chapter 54 from Where Did Your Heart Go? So sit back, relax and listen. When the applause finally ceased, the people in the aisles returned to their seats. As there was a free seat next to me, James sat down in it as the stage cleared and the judges appeared. First of all, I'd like to say a special thank you to Charlotte and Mitchell for that stunning rendition of such a well-known dance, Arlene said, applause once again echoing around us. So it's time to announce the winners of our competition, and I have to admit that it's been a hard decision to make. The standard of dancing has been of the highest quality we have ever seen as judges. As she paused, there were hushed whispers, and James leaned towards me. "I'm so nervous for them," he said. I looked down to see his hand outstretched to me. I took it and nodded back. We were unable to separate two of the groups, so we decided to award a joint second place to the Ross Rhythmics and Footloose Freestyle from Rugby. James pulled me up as the crowd started to shout and cheer, the two groups appearing on stage. I saw them scanning the crowds and I held my hand up to try and highlight us in the audience. I saw a brief look of shock cross their faces as they both realised we were standing together, then smiles as they held each other's hand tight. And the winners of this year's competition are the London Beats. The crowd erupted as the group took to the stage and acknowledged the crowd's applause. "We would like to ask for quiet so that we can watch the London Beats perform their final dance for us again," Arlene said. The crowd stayed on their feet as the group danced for us all once again. I turned to Sarah and Chris. "Fantastic result." "Yes, I wish Charlie had won, but joint second is pretty brilliant," Sarah said. After the final dance, the lights came back on and everyone sat down. "I think this calls for a big celebration," James said, turning to me. "What did you have in mind?" "Oh, I think all of us should have dinner together. Well, if our kids don't think it's terribly uncool to hang out with their parents." "We'll just have to ask them when they appear," I added. I was still aware of his hand holding mine, his finger gently rubbing over my scar, and for once I didn't feel ashamed of it. In fact, it was igniting feelings I hadn't felt in years. I sat silently next to James, just aware of his finger and my nerve endings, and all the unspoken feelings and words that still needed to be shared. When I saw Charlie and Mitch heading towards us, I pulled my hand away from James. "Well done, sweetheart," I said as she flung her arms around me. "It was fantastic, Mum, I flew," she gasped, her eyes catching Mitchell in their gaze. She broke away from my arms as she was enveloped between Sarah and Chris, who were both hugging and kissing her. Then she turned to Pam and Peter, who did the same. Finally, Mitch pulled her close again, and I reached out and hugged them both. And then James was hugging all of us. His arms felt so strong and sure and, ultimately, so right. When we broke apart, we looked at each other and I drank him all in once more. My feelings had never died. I had just locked them away to protect myself. I turned to find Pam and Peter smiling at me with the same warmth that they'd always shown. Peter held open his arms. "You have a beautiful and gifted daughter," he said, hugging me tight. "And you have a talented grandson," I replied, him kissing me on the cheek. "It was so magical watching them dance," Pam said as I nodded and we exchanged kisses. The auditorium was almost empty when we all broke apart. "I'd like to take you all to dinner later to celebrate Mitchell and Charlotte's success," James said. "Oh, thanks, Dad, that would be fantastic," Mitch answered. The rest of us all nodded, emerging into the sunlight, still early afternoon. It seemed like a shock to the system. This time Charlie went back with Mitchell, James and his parents. Sitting in the back of Chris's car, I leaned against the window and closed my eyes. I knew that I'd wanted to follow my heart, but I still had the issue of my blind date in a fortnight's time. Also, I knew that James and I would need to take things slowly, as it wasn't just the two of us now. We both had our families to think of. Back at the hotel, Sarah and Chris decided to go shopping and sightseeing while I wandered to my room. Charlie had sent me a text saying they would see me later for dinner. In the corridor I paused outside James's room. I still needed to speak to him, and I realised that this was probably the best moment. I saw the surprise on his face when he opened the door. "Hi Stephanie, would you like to come in?" "Thanks James," I replied, stepping past him. I stood awkwardly again, aware of the electricity that crackled in the air between us. "What a fantastic day," James said, breaking the silence and moving towards me. "Yes, it was," I replied, my voice soft and barely audible. "So what shall we do between now and dinner later?" "I guess we have some more talking to do." "Shall we stay here, or would you rather go for a drink somewhere?" "A drink sounds good," I said. As we left the room, I felt his hand on the small of my back, guiding me, and it felt comfortable. In the back of the taxi we were silent again, but this time it wasn't from nerves. I slowly reached across and placed my hand on his knee, remembering how it used to feel in his car. Glancing across at him shyly, he covered my hand with his and smiled back. The views from the window flashed by, and again our eyes focused on each other, and I started to fall. The taxi driver dropped us off, and we wandered along the west bank and found a corner table in a small cafe. Taking a sip of the wine, I hesitated and then jumped into the void. "I think I'd like to give things another go with you, but there is a problem." "And what would that be?" James asked, leaning forward. "I think we need to try to be friends first and get to know each other again. After all, we've probably changed as people over the years." James nodded. "We also have Charlotte, Mitchell and Darren to consider. It's not just the two of us." Again James nodded and reached out my hand across the table. I let him take it as I swallowed. "I've also promised to go on a blind date in a fortnight's time. It's a bit of a long story, that one." I watched as his eyes crinkled up and he glanced at his watch. "I have plenty of time. Let's start getting to know each other again." Over a bottle of wine and some olives, I told James all about my secret admirer, who had popped up out of the blue only a couple of weeks ago. I also confessed that I had no idea who it might be. "So you still like George Michael then?" he asked. "Of course. There's no one better. It's just a shame he's gay, otherwise I would be chasing him right now," I said, laughing at the suggestion. "And if he were straight, how could he resist?" James joked, and I saw desire flicker over his pupils. I blushed and looked away, aware that I too felt the same desire for him now as I did back then. On the journey back, James turned to me. "So how shall we do this whole friends thing then?" "I'm not sure yet, but I guess as we're still living miles apart, we'll have to chat on the phone and email as I try to sort everything out in my mind." "What? No letters this time?" James said, grinning at his suggestion. "Well, we could if you want to, but it's so slow these days. Technology is making the miles between people seem very small. And at least this time I can travel to see you instead of having to wait for you to pick me up all the time." "What car do you drive?" James asked. "Convertible. And you?" "I have a 4x4, as I have a dog that needs transport from time to time." I watched as he fished in his pocket and removed his phone to flick through the photos it held. He passed it to me and I stared into the sweet, lovable face of a black Labrador. "What's his name?" I asked. "Jester," James replied. He hesitated as if to explain, but I just shook my head and laughed as we both said Top Gun at the same time. I hadn't watched that film for years until Charlotte decided that the song her group wanted to dance to, and then we watched it together. "I watched it the other week when I realised that Mitchell's new girlfriend was your daughter," James said. "It reminds me of us and how much we were in love back then." His voice softened as emotions bubbled to the surface. I turned away. I couldn't speak, my throat tightened up with tears that threatened to break. "Don't deny that you can't still feel it between us," he asked, his finger turning my head towards him. My whole body shook as I was paralysed under his touch. His face came closer, and before I knew it, his lips were once more on mine, in a kiss that transcended time. It was as if I was floating and looking down at the two of us, but as we once were, young and in love. When the cab pulled to a halt outside the hotel, we broke apart. I looked away as a single tear seeped out from the corner of my eye. We walked back into the hotel together and hesitated for a brief moment. "So, Dinner at 8, I said. Yeah, but I'll be in the bar from 7 if you fancy a drink before. I'll see. We walked along the corridor together and paused as we reached the door to James's room. Today's been great, he said. Yes, our children were fantastic and deserved their second place. Yes, I agree, but it's more than that. It's knowing that you're back in my life again. He reached out to take both my hands in his. You can't start to understand how much I've missed you over the years. Then with a quick kiss on my cheek we broke apart. I held the words tight to my heart, which expanded to catch them, and kept them there as I entered my room. I sat down for a moment on my bed and once again thought long and hard about what I was doing. The words that James had just given me were so precious. I looked down at my hands and then turned them over. My scars would always be there, and I hoped that he would make them better. His mistake would always be with him, and I knew that at some point I'd have to talk to him about the bitch and how much contact she had with her sons, if I did decide to take the next step. How did Mitchell and Darren feel about their mother, and what part did she still play in their lives? I looked through my case and found the other dress I'd bought with me, a simple black number, but I knew I looked good in it. Placing it on the bed, I turned towards the bathroom and checked my watch. I had plenty of time for a long soak in the bath and to get ready for the evening celebrations. I wanted to look as gorgeous as possible, even though there was only one person I wanted to impress. In his room down the corridor, James pulled a shirt and some trousers out to wear that evening. The afternoon had been almost perfect. The only thing that would have made it more so would be for Stephanie to be standing right here with him now. He tried to search her soul through her eyes, but he'd found them cloudy and guarded. It was going to take him some time to break through the barrier that held her heart, the barrier that in a way he had helped to build. So there we are. Things are getting more and more exciting now that the two lovebirds from 24 years ago have decided that they're going to get back together. How romantic is that? How many of you out there have got a first love that you wouldn't mind maybe seeing again? Sorry. I'm off in my own first love world. Anyhow, don't forget, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next exciting chapter of this book. And if you do want to read ahead, you can find them all to download on Amazon.com and .co.uk for the very cheap price of 99p or 99¢. And if you'd like a paperback copy and you'd like me to scribble my signature in it, then yes, by all means get in touch. My email is on my website, which is www.audrinalane.co.uk. And I will see you all next time and leave you with memories, maybe, of your first love. Take care and bye for now.